So this business about forgiveness, now, I want to tell you that whatever you got going for you in your life, in the way of animosity, or bitterness, or anguish, or pain, or whatever, towards any other human being on our planet, whoever they are and what they've done, that the toxic reaction to that bitterness, it will never let go of you. That forgiveness is like the greatest motivator, if you will, in the world. Towards anyone or anything, hanging on to anything painful or hurtful and so on, I personally believe you've got to let go of. Not only do you have to let go of it, you don't have to make any phone calls, you don't have to let anybody else know that you're doing it. In your heart, you have to purify yourself in such a way that you just simply say, love is forgiving. And that's 2 words, and it's 1 word. When it's 1 word, it's love is forgiving. All right? And that's what it is. You must forgive. And it's also forgiving, so you don't ask anything back of it. After I did that, my whole life became so clear and so focused, and where I was going became so evident, and I left there and I outlined my book the following week. And let me tell you that I have never had a dream about my father since. I have never had a moment's anguish of any kind toward him or anything that he has done. In fact, I am completely at peace with him, and I send him love wherever he is. Whatever is going on in who he is and where he is and what it is, it's all fine. It's all okay. In fact, without those experiences that were the result of some of the things that he had done, my opportunity to help so many people and to create wonderful things for others, including myself, would never ever have materialized without that. And I see that, and I see the need for that, and I believe in it. And I also want to say to you, whatever you got inside of you is not the result of what anybody else puts there. It's the result of what you decide to have inside of you. Think for a minute about an orange. And when I've given this analogy many times, you take an orange and you squeeze it as hard as you can squeeze it, just, all right? And what comes out? These are easy questions, folks. Honest, don't look puzzled. Everybody passes, all right? Nobody fails tonight. What comes out is orange juice. But the question is, why, when you squeeze an orange real hard, does orange juice come out? And the answer to that is, because that's what's inside. These are really easy. They get easier. All right? Now, does it matter who squeezes? Does it matter what instrument you use? Does it matter what time of the day you do it? Does it matter how you do it? When you do it? No. When you squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange is what's inside. When you squeeze a person and put pressure on a person of any kind, and anger and hatred and stress and tension and depression come out, it isn't because of who is doing the squeezing or when they do it or how they choose to do it. It's because that's what's inside. And if you don't have it inside, it can never come out, no matter who you're living with. No matter how tough it may seem to you. And when somebody cuts you off on the freeway, and you're mad as hell and going to get even with them, and you're going to get up in front of them and slow down and make them see what it's like, it isn't because they cut you off that you're so upset. It's because that's what you carry around inside. And when you stop carrying that around inside, nothing that anybody does can upset you. No one can make a fool of you without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can depress you. No one can make you anxious. No one can hurt your feelings. No one can make you anything other than what you allow inside. You see, my evolution has brought me to the point of understanding that each human being on our planet must take total responsibility for his own inner development, for his own inner development. And our inner development is something that we ignore a lot as we progress through this whole ladder of life. And I think of a metaphor. The metaphor is like a candle, and the candle flame that is burning inside of you. All right? Now this candle flame, if you take a candle and walk out of here this evening and you see raindrops falling, it'll blow out your candle, and the wind will blow out your candle. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen outside of you that you have absolutely no control over to blow out your candles. Your candles are getting blown out all the time. We have an inner candle flame that must never flicker, though the worst goes before us. And that's perhaps the highest place we can get to in our lives is to understand that what our own inner development, symbolized by that candle flame, must never change, must never even flicker. It is our responsibility, not only for ourselves, but for our children as well, to raise them to believe that whatever is going on inside of you is entirely up to you. You own it. It is yours.
I love surly waiters when I go to a restaurant. I do. I love to go to check in at an airport and have just a bitch to deal with when I'm getting on the plane. Imagine yourself, just for a moment, just imagine yourself going through what you are about to go through and doing it like Pollyanna. Or like, somebody, I always loved it because people often call me Pollyanna. And Marianne Williamson used to always say, Pollyanna? That's the greatest role model in the world. She said she shows up in a town and everybody's nasty and ugly and mean and poor and nobody's not, and she leaves the town and everybody's happy and joyful and people are working and, so it's like imagine yourself being able to be in the presence of this bad man. As Lao Tzu says, a bad man is a good man's job, that if you thought of this as your job, as something, like you're going to turn this guy around. It doesn't mean you're going to stay with him. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that you are so firm and strong in your convictions and in your thoughts that you can look at him like Mother Teresa did and see Jesus Christ in another distressing disguise. And you are so free in that moment. And then when you start to do that, like with the surly waiter, for me, it's like the person I can't wait till the end of the meal because this person is usually bringing me extra desserts and wanting to come to my house and they become, you can turn them around. And my secretary, Maya, she's been with me for 30 years. She's seen me do it 1,000 times. We walk up to check into an airplane and they tell us we can't do this and we can't do that. And she just knows, just step aside. This is like, it's time. And it's time for me to do my work. And the work is like, the work comes from a book I wrote called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. Lord, said St. Francis, make me an instrument of thy peace. He didn't say, I don't have any peace. God, please just send me some peace. Send me a peaceful man. Send me somebody that's nice. He didn't say that. He said, make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, let me be like what I came from. Let me be like you, what I came from. And where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is injury, let me bring pardon. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. So that when you're in a dark room, and it's totally dark, this is a very low energy. Now, when you bring light to the present, when you light a match in a dark room, you don't have to say to the darkness, you better get out of here. You're going to have to scurry because I'm about to light a candle. You don't do that. When you bring light to the presence of darkness, not only does the darkness dissolve and disappear, but the miracle is that the darkness becomes light. That's what you want to do. You want to be someone who radiates out this high spiritual energy at such a place that the great testers, like your husband, he's just a great tester. He was sent to you. My father was a great tester. He walked out on me when I was a baby. He abandoned all of us. He spent 5 years of his life in prison. He was an alcoholic. He was abusive. He never sent a penny in support. I didn't get it until I was 34 years old and went to his grave in 1974 and was able to forgive him. I feel my father's presence here right now. He was one of the most important teachers in my life, and he was a bastard by every definition. And all 5 of his wives that he abused in the same way, all of whom I researched, all said the same thing. He taught me forgiveness. And because of my ability to go to his grave in Biloxi, Mississippi on the 27th of August in 1974, I walked away from there a totally free man. I wrote Erroneous Zones in 14 days, and my whole life, everything turned around because I was able to give that hatred out of my heart. The hatred that is, and the pain that is in there. There's a Chinese proverb that says, if you're going to pursue revenge, you'd better dig 2 graves. 2 graves. One for yourself. And that whole idea that forgiveness, Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. If you can just be love, what Katie was talking about, be that, especially when he is in the picture, especially then, and turn that around, your divorce will flow smoothly. Someone came up to me with tears bigger than yours back there saying that I just turned my marriage around, and I was married to someone that I never thought. Who was the lady? There was a lady who came up to me and said that very thing not too long ago, maybe an hour ago. And I turned around a marriage that was just headed into the dumper just by practicing what we're talking about today. Is that helpful?
It is. It is. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. God bless you.
How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it, reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling of an eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century AD, said, you carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it. Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as He does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration. Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, you can do this. Yes, you can. If we react to this message with anything other than, you're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it, then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only second-hand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent. And so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.
Line by Albert Einstein, when he was talking to his students about trying to solve mathematical problems and equations. He said, you can't ever solve a problem with the same mind that created it. It's what they call sometimes in management circles thinking outside of the dots or outside of the box, getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of looking at things the way you've always looked at them, and having a different kind of an awareness. I came across this quote not too long ago. Moving away the clouds does not make the sunshine. It merely reveals what was hidden all along. The sunshine, the sun is always there. And you don't make it shine by just taking things away. There's something inside all of us that is hidden. And it's the ability to, I call it rewriting our agreement with reality. It requires a new kind of awareness, a willingness, if you will, to see yourself as potentially capable of virtually anything. I've always loved the observation from the New Testament of Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. That within each and every one of us there is this ability to be healers. There's this ability to be able to manifest and attract anything into our lives that we put our attention on. There's this ability to live at such a high level of consciousness that we can transcend our bodies. My internal wiring has always been one of whatever it is that I've got in my life as a problem, that I have to take responsibility for it, but I also have the capacity to be able to change it. And not only to change around what it is that is not working for me, but also to change around what I have been attracting into my life. I think it begins with this whole idea of being inspired.
I've always liked that word, inspired, inspiration, because its origin is in spirit. And then the opposite word is being informed. And so when you're in form, in the physical world, when you're in form, you get information. You get lots of information. And this is what we call the information age, right? So there's no shortage of information. They say that on a little chip the size of your thumbnail, we can put the names and addresses of everybody in the United States and Canada on a little chip the size of your thumbnail. That's really more information, I think, than we need. What we are doing is we are moving from the age of information to the age of inspiration, I believe. And as we move into the age of inspiration, where collectively mankind is beginning to have a collective capacity to be able to think thoughts which empower us rather than which weaken us, which, according to Hawkins' research, up until about 1985 or 1986, collectively, mankind's collective thoughts always produced that which weakens us. And now, in the last few years, we have moved above the level where man's collective consciousness is at least at a place where collectively we are empowering ourselves rather than using force. And as we move into the world of inspiration, we have to understand what that means. And Patanjali had a wonderful observation. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. He said, when you are inspired, that is, in spirit, and remember, it is in the world of spirit, it is in the world of thoughts where we change, where we go to the place where we create anything we want for ourselves in our lives. So that remembering here, the theme is that you can't solve any problem that you might have in your life with the same mind that created it. So you're moving into a place now called spirit. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. We're moving into the world of the invisible now. When you are inspired, and think about the moments in your life when you've had the most inspiration, inspirado. You lose any touch of fatigue. I have gone and been inspired at moments in my life when I have written for almost 24 straight hours without stopping, without eating, without thinking about sleep. I just got into one of those modes, what we call a zone sometimes, where everything just flowed. When you are in that place, you transcend everything. And you don't worry about whether people are going to call you or not call you. You don't worry about your children. You don't worry about being sick. You don't think about the cold that you might have. You don't think about being tired and how much sleep you'll need. When you're inspired, you're in spirit. When you're in spirit, you're connected to your source. And now what you're doing is you're moving out of the mindset of inform or information, which is where all problems occur in the world of the physical, and you're shifting into the world of spirit. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it? We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, all these different multicolored ones, and the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that, so they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while, someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now, when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. They would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, It's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, you know, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I say, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that even, you know, I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day. 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there. I can get that leg up. I can do these kinds of things. And 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating, and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up, and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so, that doesn't happen anymore, because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think, The solution for me represents the ability to bring to your life something that can make these things called problems disappear, dissolve, and nullify. And that is what I spoke about when I opened up here a little while ago about energy. Energy comes in the form of fast and slow, high and low. And higher and faster energy nullifies lower and slower energy. A room full of darkness. Darkness is a lower and a slower energy, if you measure it, than is light. And when you bring light to the presence of a dark room, the darkness disappears. And that is a metaphor for every single one of the problems and concerns and struggles that you are facing in your life. And way back, 800 years ago, there lived a little man who gave up all of his possessions. He lived in a little village in Italy, near Florence, called Assisi. And we named one of our most famous cities in America after him. His name was Francesco, or as he became known later after his passing, St. Francis of Assisi. And I went to Assisi, and I had miracles that took place for me in visiting Assisi on several occasions. And St. Francis was one of these people who created a prayer that is perhaps the most well-known prayer on the planet today, certainly one of them. How can I become an instrument of thy peace? The ego is the part of us that wants to be at war, that wants to defeat, that wants to collect, that wants to be better than, that wants to always get more. The sacred or the highest part of ourselves is the part of us that just wants to be at peace. How can I become an instrument of peace? Not someone who's looking for peace, but someone who delivers it. There are opportunities every day. I was in a gas station just a few days ago, and in this gas station they had a car wash. And there was a young boy, he was maybe 18 or 19 years old, and he didn't speak English very well, and he couldn't figure out how to work the car wash. And he had put $2 in, and apparently it required $3. And he was in there waiting to pay for his car wash and trying to get an answer to why he couldn't get it to work. And I had just gotten some gasoline, and I walked in, and there was this man behind the counter berating this young boy and humiliating him and talking to him. And because he didn't understand the language, he talked louder to him. You know how people do that? You know, if someone doesn't understand you, you say, what I said is, and they say, I don't understand, and then you say it even louder. Well, that's what he was doing to this young boy. And I saw this is an opportunity right here, in this instant, to be an instrument of peace. And I put my arm around the young man, and I said, come with me. And I walked out to the machine, and I took $1, and I put it into and he walked away, and he was just so happy. One tiny little incident. These kinds of things, I suggest to you that you take this day and look for 5 occasions to be an instrument of peace. And you'll find one when you're on your way home, on the freeway. You'll find somebody who isn't going to let you get in. You find somebody who doesn't want to let you pass. And instead of giving them a hard time or being angry at them, try sending something called peace their way. There's a wonderful line that I have on the dashboard of my car. It says, I can choose peace rather than this. And it's always a reminder that no matter how what I'm experiencing in my life, I want to be an instrument of peace. It's been said that the 3 most difficult things to do in the world are this. The first is to send love in response to hatred. The second is to defend the absent. That is, whoever's being gossiped about, you become their spokesperson. I do this with my children all the time when they're all saying this, and then she said that, and he said that. I'll say, excuse me, but who is defending the absent person here? Well, why should anybody defend her? I'll say, well, I'll just take her position right now, if you don't mind. And the third is to admit when you were wrong. And it doesn't mean necessarily to say, I just made a mistake. It means to say, I have been making the wrong kinds of choices in my life with my mind. I've been putting my attention on what I don't want, on what others want for me, on what the world ought to be, on what it used to be, and I can't understand why it just keeps showing up, what I don't want, what others want for me, what I despise. I have to admit, almost I have to rewrite my agreement with reality. And so much of what St. Francis was speaking about back in the 13th century, because he was a man who was ridiculed wherever he went. And he was just out there trying to teach people to bring the solution, spiritual solution to your problems. If hatred is existing in your world, that's an energy field. It's a lower and a slow energy than the energy of love. If you can bring love to the presence of that hatred, it will be nullified just as if you were bringing light to darkness. But for most of us, what we do when we see hatred is we respond in kind to that hatred. Whatever choice you make in every interaction you have, make the choice to be at peace, your sacred or higher self says. Whereas your ego says, oh, no. It's much more important to be right. And so we find people in relationships struggling a lot. And one of the things that they struggle about is who's right and who's wrong. Most of the fights that you have in your relationships really basically, oftentimes you forget the details. But it's basically about who's right and who's wrong. So that if you want to have your higher or your sacred part of you ruling in your life, I suggest this to you. Practice being kind rather than right. When you have the choice, and you have the choice in your relationships with your spouse and your ex-spouse, with your parents, with your grandparents, with your in-laws, with strangers on the freeway, with flight attendants, with waiters, with whomever you interact, if you can just subdue this ego part of you which says, it's important for me to be right, which will introduce you to stress and anxiety and fear and so much of the stuff that I talked about earlier, and instead say, how can I suspend this part of me and allow the part of me that wants to be at peace, that wants to be happy, that wants to be fulfilled. And if I said to you, I'm going to give you a magic wand, and with this magic wand, I am going to allow you to just wave it and get anything that you want. Whatever you want. You can have this, you can have this car, you can have these nice clothes over here, you can have this home, whatever it is. Or I said to you, in lieu of that, I'm going to give you another wand, and you can wave this, and for every moment for the rest of your life, you'll be at peace. Whatever comes along, you'll be able to choose peace. And basically, we know that we're only here for a very short time. And being able to choose peace, which is what the sacred part of you begs you, the higher self. Once you get that, you begin to shift away, and you stop telling yourself that the people who are close to me, in relationship with me, are the people who don't belong there. I remember my wife and I, we often talk about this, and we've been together a long time. We've had many children together, and we have a very wonderful, loving relationship. Thank you. But we'd often, and one time I said to her, or she said to me, you know, we love each other, but this doesn't sound like love. Sometimes the way we talk to each other doesn't sound like love. Let's practice with each other, being kind rather than being right. And it was transformative, that when we had that walk. And doing that with your children, and doing that with a waiter. I mean, a waiter who comes to you and is like, hassled and frazzled and has been busy and all of that, and your ego says, wait a minute, I'm here and I'm important, and I have a right to be served, and I have a right to be served now. That's the ego part of you. If you can suspend that and say, you are a lucky man tonight. You got somebody who's dealing from his sacred self. And I understand. And you take your time, and you come to me, and you bring it at your convenience, whenever you can. I'm willing to suspend and you know what? You'll get served so fast and with such gratitude just for being kind, if you practice it.
Every single one of us are in relationship, whether it's with our husbands and wives, with our ex-husbands and wives, with our children, our grandchildren, whether it's with people we drive along the freeway next to, whether it's with waiters and waitresses or baggage handlers or flight attendants or people that we are in line to get into the movie. We're all in relationships, and we interact with each other all the time. And probably the best lesson that I've ever learned in my life about how to be in a relationship in a way which is powerful and happy and fulfilling is to remember this sentence. When you have a choice, and you always do, to be right or to be kind, start picking kind. The ego part of us wants to be right. How dare you not serve me as fast as I think I deserve to be served? How dare you say something to me? And immediately we want to make that other person wrong and make ourselves right. But there's a part of each one of us that wants to be happy, wants to be at peace. And that part of us says, it doesn't matter whether you're right. It doesn't matter about your ego. All you want is to be at peace, so pick kind. This kind of an attitude, if we had more of this, not only in our own personal lives, would we improve virtually every relationship we have with all of the people closest to us and all of the strangers we interact with. But on our planet as well, we would begin to understand the wisdom that on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides, that we're all one. We're all breathing the same air. We're all drinking the same water. We're all being warmed by the same sun. And as they say, as the Native Americans used to say, no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. It applies in your relationships, and it applies as a people as well.
You begin to sense there's trouble ahead. And so you look at a group of people that are standing on a corner and you think that could be trouble. And your intuition says, run around them rather than next to them. And you run and you avoid that. And something tells you when you're walking out of a parking lot, there's some intuitive sense that says, I think I should have somebody accompany me when I'm doing this. And you listen to that intuition. Sometimes it isn't there and it's not necessary. When it's there, you pay attention. You begin, synchronicity isn't any more confusing than the thought that exists between a mother and her baby. It's not any more difficult to understand than the idea of a remote control in your television set. And when we then have these synchronistic events in which we access our intuition, and what I'm suggesting is that when you reach these higher frequencies, intuition, insight, creativity, all of these things become negotiable. You can access them. You have the knowing. Because when you form a picture in your head of what you would like to attract into your life, you can begin to attract abundance and virtually anything else that you put your attention on. It's a law of the universe. Get that picture. See yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. And every great artist, every great thinker is able to do just that. They have been able to see themselves as completing something. Do you know how difficult it is for so many people who get into a doctoral program? I think the statistics are that out of every 10 people admitted into a PhD program, 1 completes it. 9 out of 10 never complete it because they can't picture themselves writing a dissertation. The reason that I knew when I entered the doctoral program and was told that 9 out of 10 don't complete it, I already saw myself as having my doctorate. And I just knew that that was something that I had to do. And I suggest that there are people right in here, there are physicians in here, who probably entered medical school. There's a lady right here in the front who entered medical school. How many women who enter medical school complete the entire process and become medical doctors and have a practice? It's getting higher, but the statistics are against you as you enter something like that. But if you see yourself as having a practice, you see yourself as a healer, you see yourself as someone who is capable of becoming a doctor, or anything else in your life, if you see it and get that picture, and I can't tell you, I try to teach this to my children. My daughter who wants to sing, I just said, sing. See yourself as a singer. Get that picture, and no matter what comes your way, don't ever let anybody ever tell you that it won't happen. You can let them tell you, and all you have to do is use that as a way to step into the gap and then out of the gap over here into the world of spirit and bring that energy of knowing, that energy of insight, that energy of intuition. Are you listening, Jennifer? Because if you have that picture, there's nothing that can stop you. And you don't evaluate whether or not you are successful on the basis of whether people buy your CDs. That's the biggest mistake you could make. Or whether people read your books, or whether people want to come and hear your lectures or buy your tapes. You don't do it that way. You evaluate whether or not you are a success by being one of those people who's on the road that's hardly ever crowded and enjoying everything that they do because they're seeing themselves as someone who couldn't be any place else. And you no longer find enlightenment through suffering. You no longer find enlightenment through having an awareness in the moment of what it is that you need to do to learn the lesson that's happening for you right now. You are now a person who's out in front of yourself, and you see it coming. And that makes you a master who lives coincidences, not in the sense of them being accidents, but having a perfect fit.
I think the most important thing that you can get out of this is to understand that you are a choice-making individual, and that all of the conditions that you find yourself in your life, all of the circumstances of your life, all of the emotional reactions that you have to all of the people and all of the things and events and so on that take place in your life are really choices. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get, because they're raised to believe that I can't help the way I feel. I have a right to be miserable when somebody treats me in a certain way. I can't help it. I've always been that way. It's just my nature. It's just the kind of person that I am.
This waiter was directly from Italy and was serving this wonderful pasta and all of these things. And he was a madman. He was a maniac. Every customer was getting him all upset. He would talk to the other head waiters and running back and forth and getting himself all worked up. Finally, I said, come on over here. He said, what are you doing this for? I do this all the time. You do therapy wherever you go, right? I said, what are you taking this so serious? All you're doing is serving spaghetti. It's no big deal. I said to him, you know, before you're 50 years old, you're going to have a heart attack. Guarantee it, if you continue to behave that way every day. He said, look, what do you expect from me? I'm Italian. So, well, that explains it. I mean, his rationale for his behavior was, I can't do anything about it, I inherited it. You know, I just got deficient anger genes. I've heard kids say that, you know, when they're failing math. I can't help it. My father was lousy at math, my grandfather was lousy. I inherited, you know, deficient math genes. It's just not my fault. I can't do anything about it. The fact is that anything that goes on inside of you that is immobilizing, that gets in your way, that keeps you from functioning in the ways that you would like to function, that stops you from reaching your goals, whatever they may be in your life, anything inside, you choose. It's yours. You own it all. And if you don't like anything about yourself, anything, are you shy? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Are you somebody who can't handle getting up in front of groups because it scares you? Are you someone who gets angry too much? Do you find yourself being manipulated and controlled by other people too often? Are you afraid to stand up for what you believe? Are you a terrible cook? Are you lousy at tennis? You haven't got a backhand? Whatever it may be, it doesn't make any difference. You are the sum total of the choices that you make in your life. If you don't buy that, if you buy into another system, which a lot of psychologists will teach you, which is, it's in your unconscious. You can't help it. After all, you're a middle child. What do you expect from a middle child? You know, certainly can't have any identity of your own. Or maybe you're an only child. Oh, God. Maybe you're the youngest of 12. You had 11 parents, you know, all your life. Somebody telling you what to do from the time or maybe you were the oldest and you had to be a parent for 9 others or whatever. You can use any excuse that you want, or you can just say, the devil made me do it, or it's God's fault. You know, a lot of people blame God. God and Mother are most responsible for all of the things that are wrong with us, you know. the classic, the one I heard over and over and over again in all the years. And I announced it on network television one night. I said, I came here tonight for one reason. I want to tell everybody in America that your mother liked your sister better. I heard it every day for 20 years. It must be true. I can't do it. My mother liked my sister better. No wonder I can't. She was the one that got all the attention. I didn't get anything. Her pictures and all the photographs. Nothing for me. I know some of you don't have a sister and you think, well, then that's not the reason. She wanted one. Really. And she would have liked her better. I guarantee it. It's taking responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, which is what Wayne Dyer is about, if you really want to take it home to anybody else. No blame is allowed for anything that goes on in your life. Virtually everything in your life boils down to what kinds of attitudes, what kinds of beliefs do you have about any given situation. You try to set your expectations in such a way so that you understand that your life is nothing more than a series of choices.